Hello everyone, I'm Surojit Roy, co-founder of Firescore Interactive, and today we're going to be talking about our hit game from last year, Acrylic Nails. To truly understand the journey of Acrylic Nails, we believe it's important to get a bit of context first, and to understand the story of Firescore Interactive. So we're going to jump into a little bit of history on our team and on our company first. To start with, the team from Firescore Interactive began working together in April 2018. This was when the hypercasual industry was just starting to gain mainstream traction. I remember Voodoo was releasing new games every other day, and a lot of studios worldwide were beginning to see success with new games. So we started testing hypercasual games with a few different publishers. After failing our first 9 tests, we decided to stop working on these games because we weren't seeing any success, and it was extremely frustrating to keep building out new ideas and to constantly keep failing. So we chose to work on a single product only, which was a gaming platform. Now we worked on that platform for over a year and we didn't see much success there either, to be honest. And at that time, we started running out of money. We couldn't afford to pay our team's salaries. During this time, my co-founder Karan Khairajani happened to read an article online that said Crazy Labs was going to be investing a large sum of money into the hyper casual space, and they were looking for developers to partner with. Within a week, we were on a call with Moria Goldstein from Crazy Labs, and we had worked out a deal which could help keep our company alive. In exchange, we would test out a few game ideas each month with Crazy Labs. This was in November 2019. Now, we tested a couple of games with Crazy Labs at first, but we weren't able to pass the initial CPI test. We iterated on these games a couple of times, and while we saw improvements, we still couldn't see a pass test. We ran a test for a game based on a viral trend online, and that trend was called soap cutting. Now, through a process that lasted not more than 10 days, we built out a CPI test for soap cutting, which passed with flying colors. We doubled down, we stopped everything else, and we focused all our efforts on getting soap cutting to launch. With Crazy Labs' help, we were able to build a really strong version of the game to put out for an initial test. The CPI that we got was at first below 10 cents, and our first retention test with very few levels came booming in with a retention at over 55%. Now, a little over a month later, on Christmas Day, we woke up to soap cutting as the number one game and app in the US, and this trend followed in most of the major countries worldwide across both iOS and Android. Over the next few months, we focused heavily on the live ops for soap cutting, building features to keep the CPI low and also to enhance the retention of the game. The success of soap cutting was able to keep Firescore Interactive alive, and the media attention from a number one hit meant the company and our work had become well known in the Indian games industry. Our working relationship with Crazy Labs was going well, and with our combined success with soap cutting, we decided to enter an exclusive partnership to test more games and partner with new studios in India under the banner of the first Crazy Hub. While our plans for a Crazy Hub would be put on hold due to the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns, it didn't stop us from creating our next hit game. And in August 2020, we began work on Acrylic Nails. So before we jump into the actual production of the game, it's important to learn about things that happened in pre-production. That is before we actually started building the CTR test or actually started building the game itself. The first step in this process was to identify the trend. Crazy Labs' publishing head Moria Goldstein had noticed this trend across platforms, everywhere from Facebook to Instagram, TikTok. Girls were posting videos of their acrylic nails almost every day. And the important thing was that not only were people posting every day, but there were thousands of people engaging with each of these posts, liking, commenting, sharing the posts, and making sure the trend was staying popular and not just popular with people who wanted to create the content, but also popular with people who wanted to view the content. There were some really popular influencers who had dedicated pages to only posting about acrylic nails. Now, Moria asked us to start work on a CTR test for this concept, and we were told that we would be doing this in direct competition with another Crazy Lab studio. We were also given a very short 3 week timeline to complete the CTR test. Now, keep in mind, this was around July or August of 2020, which was pretty much the peak of COVID and the lockdowns worldwide, and even more so in India. Offices weren't allowed to function with more than 5 people, and public transport was not available anywhere. We had barely gotten to grips with working from home at all, and it would be virtually impossible for our team to build this test remotely within the timeline that we were given. So, Karan, my co founder, along with our lead developer and lead artists, Siddesh and Ravish, began meeting at the office to produce the CTR video. We had collaborated on the basic game design with Moria and Rotem Eldor over a Skype call, and a paper sketch was quickly prepared to show what the CTR video would contain. But more on that later. The trend itself was hugely popular because of the number of people posting about the subject. There was inspiration to be gained everywhere. We were following channels on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook. We kept an eye on the hottest trends in acrylic nails. Some of the posts that we were seeing had over 5, sometimes 10 million views, and this was a clear indicator to us that the trend could be turned into a successful game. But what goes into gamifying a popular trend? While we had stumbled on gold with soap cutting, it was only the first time we'd ever done something like that. We hadn't identified yet a process which would allow us to do it again. But with the help from our publishers, we broke down what it would take to turn this concept into a great game. And the first step to do that was to identify what people loved about these videos. And this included reading every blog post, every comment, watching nearly every video from beginning to end, seeing every image posted online to see what kind of designs people were posting. All of this to find the things that people loved about engaging with this content. After that, we had to identify which parts of the engaging experience would actually be suited to a 30-second video ad. And identifying this was very difficult. But having the advantage of the newly created click dashboard from Crazy Labs allowed us to test multiple variations of the video at the same time. This gave us the flexibility to actually look at the data on which of the variations that we had created were performing best. In the end, we created a video that was as close to the real experience as possible. Everything from the most popular nail colors to the aesthetics from the posts we were seeing, and we also tried to retain the realism of what we were seeing in every post online. We took into account all the popular comments on each of the posts and distilled it down to a few variations of a 30-second video ad. The result was a number one hit game. But where did it all begin? Usually, to start production on a game, most designers would begin with a design document. I'm sure you've built a design document or seen one or been part of working on one. But to start production on an ad, an advertiser would probably look to build out a storyboard. And while we are most definitely in the business of making games, hypercasual allows us a different process, where we're not just game developers, but we're also advertisers. In fact, we are advertisers first in our hypercasual process. So, on our first Skype call to discuss the acrylic nails trend, our publishing head Moria went ahead and created a paper sketch for us. And on this paper sketch was the storyboard of what would be in the CTR video. And that's what you see on your screen right now. The sketch itself was like the design document for the CTR video, as it contained a whole lot of details shown on very little real estate. We had identified very early which steps of the real life process we would incorporate into the game. And this was all after taking into account all of the knowledge and data we had built up on what was really popular in the trend itself. With all the analysis that went into it, this was what we came up with. And with our production crew ready to go in the middle of a raging pandemic, amid a number of personal and professional challenges, we set out to build the first CTR videos. Now, as you can see, the video and the steps will match very closely, including the camera angle, all the steps used, the tools that we planned to use as well. Once the CTR videos were ready to test, it really didn't take too long for us to get the game out to market. And there were a few reasons for this. The CTR test itself delivered incredible results, the likes of which we had never seen before. In fact, the results were so good that our publishers decided it would probably be best to skip the CPI test altogether and start building the game out for launch. What followed was some of the most intense few weeks of production that we had ever experienced. While soap cutting had been our breakout success, we knew what that tasted like, and we weren't willing to lose this opportunity to have another top charts hit. So we worked as many hours of the day as we could stay awake for, in an attempt to taste that success again. There were late nights, early mornings, and inconceivable challenges that we hadn't foreseen in our production pipeline. Some days we would begin and end trying to solve a single problem. Crazy Labs developers and their lead technical artists played a big part in helping us overcome some of these challenges. A big thank you to Noam Toledano. The limited experience we possessed to allow us to build a game of this scope so quickly was completely made up for by the fact that Crazy Labs had a whole lot of talented folks there to back us up. But the process was still grueling. We often found ourselves taking naps in the office, and sometimes we left work when the sun was starting to rise. To us, it wasn't a question of whether we'd put in the hours to get there or not, because we always knew that we would. Our main priority was to see another one of our games launched and competing for the number one spot worldwide. While 6 weeks seems like a very short time from the outside, I can tell you that we squeezed in probably 8 to 10 weeks of work in that time. But it was all worth it in the end, because at launch we had a CPI of only 5 cents, and our day one retention was reasonable enough at 37% for us to go ahead and scale. Over the next few weeks, we worked hand in hand with Crazy Labs teams to build out some really awesome features for the game, which you can download the game and check out across any platform. This allowed us to stay in the top 10 for a really long time. These were some of the memories from our time building Acrylic Nails. Our super talented lead developer and art director worked closely together to build out their second masterpiece. As you can see, most of these pictures are taken late into the night, and while we don't endorse working overtime all the time, as a team we accept that sometimes it takes a little bit extra to become the number one game in the world. As the game began to scale, we were incredibly proud of how it had turned out. It looked, felt, and played beyond what we had expected, and as a complete package, we were satisfied with the result. Our own happiness was reflected in the way the game performed in the top charts. As in October, Acrylic Nails was ranked as the number one downloaded hypercasual game for the month on iOS worldwide. In fact, the only game or app we didn't beat for the number one spot in the overall standings across platforms worldwide was Among Us. Acrylic Nails was a top chart success, but as always, this is where the important work begins. To keep a game generating revenue for long, we must be willing to support it beyond launch. At this point, a number of teams from our publisher's side got involved to keep the game performing well. At its peak, there could be anywhere from 20 to 30 people across 5 or 6 countries that are concurrently involved with building out the game. Now let's discuss the game design of Acrylic Nails for a moment. There were some really interesting choices that we had to make with regards to the game design, especially in terms of whether we wanted to build challenging gameplay or whether we wanted to build a complete DIY simulation. We faced a similar challenge when building out the design for soap cutting as well, and in both cases we went in the direction of building a complete simulation. In fact, some of our friends tell us that our games are not games, but when you play them, they're more like gamified experiences. And if you play each of those games, you'll notice that too. This is a significant design choice we made very early on in the production cycle of both games. And because we didn't make the game challenging for the user to play, we chose instead to go in the direction of giving them a whole lot of choices and combinations to mix and match to create their own perfect design. After launch, we serviced the game with the same principles in mind. We produced more content, more game modes, more features, and did all of this to get our key metrics healthy. We supported the game with seasonal content as well, and had some pretty cool additions for Halloween and Christmas that you can still check out if you download the game now. Even as we speak, we're building and testing new features for Acrylic Nails. The game was published over 9 months ago, but still continues to be a strong driver in the Crazy Labs portfolio, both in terms of scale and revenue. We are consistently in and around the top charts in simulation and role playing, and are always in the conversation for the top 100 games for the last 9 months. Here's an example of some of the variety that we could build early on in our production cycle. These screenshots were taken from my phone when the very first time we had a playable build, with all the steps of the game incorporated. Safe to say, I couldn't wait to try out the complete flow for the first time, and spent many hours that night exploring what was possible with this little bundle of technology that we had built. So, these are our 10 simple tips to help you produce your first or your second hyper casual hit. Number 1, work hard. As you've seen from our journey, hard work trumps all. While we may be building hyper casual games, our market environment is hyper competitive. How many times have you had an idea and within a few days or weeks have seen the exact same game make it to the top charts? This is totally normal and it happens to all of us. It's impossible to hit every idea that you have with a hit game, but the best way to give yourself a shot is to work hard. And there is no substitute for that. CTR and CPI tests, they're just the beginning. A lot of the real work to keep the game profitable begins post launch. Many times a publisher will ask you to launch a game before every launch worthy feature is ready. At times like this, you must be ready to continue working hard and building out features beyond launch. This will ensure that the game stays healthy and generates the maximum amount of revenue possible. Get ready for the grind. Number 3, recruit talented and hardworking team members. Without a strong team, it's very difficult to find success in the market. A lot of times, either timelines or technology hurdles will stand in your way. This is when your strong team is critical to your success. In crunch times, we tend to spend a lot of time with our teams, even more so than we do with our families sometimes. And at times like these, the team is most important. Number 4, recognize and identify your weaknesses early on. Once you know where your strengths lie, you'll automatically be building games that are more suited to you and more suited to your strengths. But just as importantly as knowing your strengths is also knowing your weaknesses. When you've identified what those are, it's easy to look for support in those areas, especially if you're working with a supportive publisher. This can be a very important part in accomplishing your goals and building your skill sets for your next games. Know your genre. Each genre is very different and comes with its own set of challenges and hurdles. Each genre also stands almost in opposition to the others sometimes. For example, runners have fail mechanics, while very few simulations do. On the other hand, narrative and puzzle games seem to work in 2D, yet other genres are hard to crack with a 2D style. There are deeper rules for each of these genres, and if you play enough games in the genre you're chasing, it's possible to apply those rules to create your own top charts hit. Number 6, research the market. The market can tell you everything about what to build next, even more than your own brain can. When performing your research, sometimes you'll come to a point where you're out of ideas. But just looking at the market and the games that have been successful in the past can always help you decide what to build in the future. Sometimes it's the market that has all the answers. Keep an eye on the top charts. There are lots of clues in the top charts on what is soon going to become a trend. Usually, when a game makes it into the top 10, it means there is a market out there for other games similar to this, especially when that game is unique. We then see a number of tests with a similar game format or theme being tested immediately after around the world. And a lot of them even make it as successful games and sometimes beat out the inspiration. Of course, we try to avoid copyright infringement and copying games outright. Those are against the law. But there's still a lot of extremely unique ideas that can spawn from checking out other games. Evolve with the market. A few years ago, the hyper-casual game space was filled with simple 2D games, balls as main characters, and very little art overhead to build out a successful game. Things have changed now, and since then, even the skills of the studios building these games has had to evolve. This is a clear indicator that you need to be flexible as a studio. Maybe tomorrow the process and the market will change so dramatically that the skills in your team are suddenly no longer relevant. Be ready to evolve because the market can easily leave us all behind. Number 9, inspiration is everywhere. I bet you could take a walk around your neighborhood right now, and if you're looking and listening closely enough, you will probably find inspiration for at least one game idea out there. Inspiration is all around us at all times, and we need to leverage what we experience to build out our successful products. Lastly, and most importantly, have fun. The grind in this space requires you to fail many times before you succeed. And that's why fun is an important thing that binds everything together. When you're struggling with a technical challenge or running out of ideas, a positive environment with good people can smooth out even the toughest problems. So have fun. So our two games up to this point have generated over 150 million installs worldwide since launch. Soap cutting and acrylic are really big achievements for our team, and we're extremely proud of them. And we hope that soon each of these games will cross the 100 million downloads mark. Which brings me to our third and most recent top chart success, Hair Eye. Hair Eye completes the hat trick for our team and was recently launched across platforms worldwide. The game is similar to Acrylic Nails in its format, but provides a vastly different simulation experience on a totally different subject. You can check it out now on Android and iOS and give us your thoughts. Now, along with our three top charts hits, Firescore is also involved with running Crazy Labs, Crazy Hubs program in India. We will soon be beginning this one of its kind bootcamp for newcomers in the industry with mentorship and professional training on how you can start your own hyper casual game studio. New hubs are popping up all around the world, and our team is proud to be operating the first of its kind Crazy Hub in India. In conclusion, we'd just like to say thank you to those of you that are here and to Hyper Games Conference for having us. I'd love to take any questions you may have to help further your studio's mission.